Good morning friends, welcome to the video. Today we shall be talking about trade. Trade in general, the basics and fundamentals, the aspects relevant to trading of goods, services and capex. We shall be talking about the regulations associated with it, the pros and cons of trade, how the markets or the GDP is affected by trade, the aids trade and its development, and things like that. Trade had been existing from time immemorial. The day one man had some need and another man had some excess of goods or service, they had been exchanging it, and that was by barter. Thereafter, when mankind invented money, the money served as a time value and storehouse for value, and accordingly, people were able to buy and sell anything at any point in time. So whenever there is a buyer, a seller, and a market, trade could happen. As long as people are willing to supply goods and some other set of people are willing to pay for it, trade will flourish. Trade had contributed to providing employment to billions of people worldwide. Trade had brought about unity among people. Whenever the factors of production or the resources are available and when it could be put to effective use productively, trade can flourish because that country will be able to supply in a more competitive price. Wherever there is a comparative cost advantage, the nations are supposed to engage in those activities where they have a better advantage and to import goods from other nations which are produced by nations which have advantage in some other goods or services. The intention of trade among nations and the organizations associated with it is to ensure free, smooth and predictable flow. Trade contributes a lot to the GDP and economy of the world. Trade happens in goods, in services, in capital goods and investment. Trade could be domestic and international. If you look at the history, we have archaeological evidences to say the produces of Baltic were available in the United Kingdom. We also have literary evidences that says trade happened among the nations, continents, cultures. The Indus Valley civilization, the Tigris and Euphrates civilization, the Mesopotamian civilization, and others, when we dig up, we find enough evidence that there were inter-civilization trade. Trade had brought in unity in the form of free trade associations, customs union, and all this is because of the geopolitical stability requirement of the nations. If people are not going to war, it is because they want to facilitate trade of their produces. In case of war, the most affected segments are the import and export segment. Your ports will not be able to import the needs of your citizens. Your ports will not be able to send out goods to realize the much wanted foreign currency to support your war. When we look at markets, we can find that the Singapore, Hong Kong or Dubai had grown as international financial centers and international trading centers. The markets facilitate fair competition and encourage investment. The Silk Road and the Amber Road concepts were because of the trade markets. These markets help in eliminating barriers and encouraging multilateral cooperation. But for the markets, the trade would not have grown multifold as it is today. The e-world today or the digital internet world have brought in further scope of improving the depth of trade day by day. Trade is not without its own critics and people who say trade is not good for the nations. It is right to a certain extent on certain aspects, but not in total necessarily. The need for guarantees and promises had given rise to development of uniform rules for demand guarantees and the international standby practices. The International Chamber of Commerce, which is an umbrella organization of all the Chamber of Commerce of the nation states, had developed and issued standard guidelines in the form of uniform customs and practices for document records, uniform rules for bank payment obligations, international standby banking practices, uniform rules for collections, and Incoterms, international commercial terms. These were possible or necessitated only because of the growth of trade worldwide. Initially, the empires, the good old nations, went out in search of exotic things to meet the needs of their rich citizens. Thereafter, they established colonies. The colonies served as either the market for their producers or as a source of raw materials for their industries. Later, the East India Trading Company, which was one such trading establishment, were able to rule over India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. There are many more examples like this. Today, the MNCs, the multinational corporates, are controlling a large portion of the global trade, have presence in almost all the countries, and are able to influence the government policies to a large extent. Because of this, there is a transfer of wealth to a certain extent from richer nations to poorer nations, and the transfer of cheap raw materials, minerals, and agricultural producers from poorer nations to feed the wealthy nations. A lot of regulations were necessitated because of the large expansion of trade. The World Trade Organization had brought out General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, General Agreement on Trade and Services, the TRIPS, trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. There had been various legislations, domestic and international, to facilitate and encourage trade. The tariffs and barriers had come in to regulate trade. The tariffs are a method by which a country tries to promote export and prevent imports. Model contracts have been drawn up to ensure there are minimum disputes among nations. There are treaties, bilateral or multilateral, to promote inter-country trade. The liberalization, privatization, and globalization of the economy worldwide have brought in more scope for misunderstanding, disputes, and need for arbitration. The United Nations Commission on International Trade Law is one such endeavor by an international body to aid trade to be more smooth and more easy. UN had also drawn up a contract for international sale of goods format so that people can have a better understanding and consensus ad item at the beginning of the trade negotiation. There are lots of aids to trade which facilitate trade, and these are developed by leaps and bounds over the years to facilitate trade. Warehouses and cold chains are one of them. Insurance and reinsurance facilities is another, wherein the goods are safeguarded. The logistics and the transport and maritime facilities are another, where the goods are facilitated to be shipped. Today we have car carriers or banana carriers. We have lots of charter party vessels. We have oil tankers. All these are, if not available, trade may not flourish. We have a very good telecommunication network. We have a very dependable, effective, and efficient swift messaging system for financial message interchange. We have trade promotion bodies like Exporters Association or OPEC. We have global bodies like WTO to regulate, guide, and facilitate trade. Exim Bank-like institutions are there in every nation to promote trade. You have export promotion funds in lots of sovereign nations. We have mercantile agents who are intermediaries in facilitating trade. We have companies like Mitsui Sumitomo who are large international buyers and sellers who could move the markets. They are the movers and shakers of commodity trade. Because of these aids to trade and its developed state, it's what helping us to have a free, smooth, and predictable flow of trade the world over. One of the reasons why trade has expanded so much in these days is because of the fragmentation. We shall look at a Li & Fung example of a garment supply chain. Li & Fung is a known name in the garment industry, garment market. How they do the things is that they cut the yarn in South Korea, they have it woven and dyed in Taiwan, they have the fabric cut in Bangladesh, thereafter it is assembled and packed in Thailand, stitched and packed in Thailand, and it is sold to the brands in Europe who in turn sell it to probably the end users in United States of America. So, at different parts of a particular product or a garment is happening in different countries. So there is an export and import of semi-finished goods among these nations. So when we say trade in goods, services or investment, we mean these goods could be raw materials, intermediary goods, semi-finished goods, byproducts or fully finished end product goods. So to summarize, as we discussed, a lot of regulations had come into existence to facilitate trade. There are some pros and cons for the trade. As usual for any aspect of human endeavor, there will be supporters and there will be some negative points which needs to be looked at. Trade is facilitated today because of the fragmentation and the comparative cost advantage or the availability of resources and factors of production at a competitive price in different countries makes it possible to have a supply chain across the countries if a company like Nippon can have it coordinated properly. The aids of trade like insurance, banking, technology, telecommunications, warehouses have developed so much today that it facilitates better trade faster among the nations. There had been improvement and development of the markets. Historically, trade had been there, but what we see today is very hi-fi, sophisticated. The brands like Coca-Cola, Apple and Google are able to grow into what they are today only because of the ability to have an international trade, a global presence and a worldwide reach that they can command today because of the facility offered by the regulations and the aids to trade to reach wherever they want, whenever they want. Thanks for watching the video. We shall meet again with another subject another day.